WWE Hall of Famer and former Raw General Manager Mick Foley. Enjoy. All right. Well, we want to talk to you, Mick, about the 25th anniversary episode of Monday Night Raw, which fans can watch January 22nd, 8/7 Central on the USA Network, of course, emanating from two separate locations, Barclays Center in Brooklyn and that original home of the Manhattan Center in NYC. Mick, let me take you back in time here. January 1993, the first Raw episode. You're Cactus Jack in WCW, about to embark on a feud with Big Van Vader. What's the reaction at that time for WWF launching this weekly show?
I don't think anyone saw it as a huge landmark event, other than it was WWE attempting to, do a little something different. The entire name Raw was meant to, mean, kind of rough and unpolished. And, I liked the look of the show immediately. I mean, there was some fun aspects to that first show, but I don't think any of us, including people in WWE, thought, this is going to be a keeper. This is going to be around for a couple decades and more.
No question about it. When you consider the climate at that time, obviously once the Monday Night Wars got going, Raw became a much more valuable vehicle. What would you say is, let's say, Raw's secret? I mean, ultimately, the same question could be applied to Vince McMahon or the WWE, but the secret to have that kind of longevity for one program where it can become, the longest rated episodic television show through all the changes of popular culture and how it's consumed.
Well, I think there's just something to having it there for us through thick and thin, without off seasons, with very few missing shows. For a long time we'd missed 2 weeks because of the Westminster Dog Show on USA, but that's been rectified. I just think there's something. The quality of the show is that's notwithstanding, because they're constantly changing it, constantly making it relevant for the new generation, finding ways to bring in new fans, keep old fans entertained. And of course, people are always leaving, always coming, always new fans are always coming in, old fans are leaving. But you hear from the old fans all the time who love the fact that, hey, I may not watch Raw as much as I used to, but it's great. It's still there for you. So when Monday Night Football packs up and goes, for the season, Raw is still there for you. And I think the fact that you have people who are going out of their way to do their try their very best to put on the best show they can every week, even on Christmas night. We were the first show back live after the tragedy of 9/11. It's really important. Mr. McMahon believes wholeheartedly in the importance of entertaining people and taking their minds off problems, and I don't think anyone's done it better than Raw over the last 25 years.
No, that's a great point. I got to ask you, though, this year was live on Christmas for the first time. Nobody loves Santa Claus more than Mick Foley. Tell me your phone wasn't ringing. Where's the misconnection here? Why didn't we see you with the suit on?
They know better than ask me to leave my house on Christmas. Maybe I could have sent in a message from the North Pole, but I really felt for the superstars who are out there. But my son watched 4 basketball games on TV that day. So if those guys are out there doing their thing, then I guess every once in a while it should be expected that our guys are out there, especially on a live TV night.
Very, very true. Now, what can fans expect from this 25th anniversary episode? We've been told, it's going to be old meeting new. We've already heard guys like Jim Ross, Kevin Nash say they are going to be a part, or they hope. Maybe The Undertaker. Is Mick Foley going to be a part, and what can we expect here?
Well, I've definitely been invited. I'm trying to clear a room on the schedule. But even if I'm not there, I'm there in person. I'm there in spirit. And, the show has been such a big part of my life, not only for the times that I wrestled on it, but the 2 stints I had as commissioner and general manager, and my biggest role has been as a fan. So I still watch on a regular basis with the family, and if I'm not there live, I'll be glued to all 3 hours that take place at Barclays and the Manhattan Center.
Mick, you mentioned your run as Raw GM, most recently ending in March of 2017. I got to give you a high five, give you flying colors here. It became must watch, and no segment was better in my eyes than when you exited, when you were storyline fired in March of 2017. I thought it was one of the segments of the year when we ended up doing our year-end awards on the CBS Sports show here just recently. You try to fire Stephanie McMahon. She turns the tables on you. Eventually, you're putting Sacco on Triple H. Mick, the crowd was red hot as Seth Rollins comes in to save you. What do you remember about that segment? Because, for recent memory, that's about as good as it gets there on the Red brand.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, when you take that role, especially if a lot of emphasis is going to be placed on your character, that it's fairly short-lived. You're working with a combustible on-air personality like Stephanie. You know that an on-air firing is for a Raw GM what an on-air death is for a soap opera actor. Like, it's just inevitable. And so I just went in with the attitude that we were going to try to benefit the show for, change the show for the better, and that I was going to try to get involved in some storylines and try to, raise the profiles of a few people while I was there, and then I wanted to be fired in spectacular fashion. And that was a dream firing. It was one of the best segments I've ever been involved in.
And it had that...
and then... especially the week before. The week before I was fired was when I suggested Stephanie leave, and the interaction with Triple H and the sock, and then the next week was more of a formality. But they're both great moments for me. But it's strange to say that being fired by Stephanie McMahon was one of my great moments on Raw, but. It was. I felt afterwards like I just had a huge pay-per-view match. Like, it was the most excited I'd been after a show in many years.
Yeah, there was some kind of juice in the air for that segment. It felt Attitude Era, seeing you and Triple H, of course, go back and forth. So, Mick, you're a veteran, obviously, of many eras, being in the Attitude Era, ECW, death matches in Japan, all the way through to being a part of this current PG product at times. So, for 2018... for your taste as a wrestling fan, if you were running the show in a major promotion, what's the best mix? Whether it's PG, PG-13, rebooting sort of almost an R-rated feel of the late 90s. For today's day and age, what's the best type of wrestling you'd like to see?
Oh, the best type of wrestling I like to see?
The overall package, the entertainment, all that.
I think, I'm really happy with the current product. I think 3 hours is really difficult to deliver on. And, somebody almost yelled at me at an airport saying, I'll tell you what the problem with Raw is. I said, oh, no. He goes, you can't have a 3-hour show without The Miz. and it points out how important some of these characters are, like in, just the sheer entertainment factor that some of these guys bring. It's difficult to do a 3-hour show and make it compelling and exciting for 180 minutes. But I think that superstars have stepped up. I think, we tend, as wrestling fans, to take things for granted. And, when I see a show where guys are busting their butts and, you see 3 very good matches and possibly 1 great match, I'm happy. I know how much work goes into putting on the best show possible. There are other options for people who are not WWE fans, but when it comes to putting on a 3-hour variety show live for, every week without an off season, I don't think you can knock the efforts of WWE or the execution.
And certainly, Mick, the rent gets raised on Raw anytime Mr. McMahon makes an appearance, or the rare times on SmackDown Live. Just the electricity goes through the air. Seems to become contagious when you're watching that everyone else steps up. So I'm sure you saw Vince this past year on SmackDown Live getting busted open against Kevin Owens. It was one of the moments of the year. How do you compare his intensity as a performer and being across from him in a segment or a match to anyone else you've ever worked with?
Well, Vince's intensity isn't just as a performer. I think it's with him 24/7. It's to what he brings to every meeting, every phone call, every handshake, every behind-the-scenes, talk with a superstar. So I wouldn't say he's the most intense performer to look at across the screen, although he's always, he is 100% intent on delivering the most exciting, most entertaining segment he possibly can. And when you have that type of leadership, it works its way down. When you see the boss being willing to go to extremes to entertain his fan base, and when I say extremes, it's not just the headbutt from Kevin Owens. It's wetting his pants during a classic episode of Raw. Like, if the boss is willing to have poop fall on him from the sky and willing to wet his pants, then you know that you as performers have to be just as selfless and be willing to do whatever it takes to entertain the audience.
No question about it. Mick, anytime people get a chance to interview a legend, they always throw out the Mount Rushmore conversation, and it's inevitably the same guy, so I'm not going to go there. But you've been in the locker room. You've worked on Raw the last couple of years. You get to know a lot of these top talent today. Are there a group of guys that you look at and say, okay, 10, 15 years from now, these are the guys that are going to enter those same Mount Rushmore conversations with Rock and Hogan and Flair and all of that? Who are the guys from today that you are just most impressed with in what they're doing out there?
Well, I think when it comes to the post-Attitude era, John Cena certainly has to be on that wall. And then you see guys who are just performing on sometimes you don't appreciate someone until you step away and look at the entirety of their contribution, and you just go, wow, like, is AJ Styles really doing this, on a weekly basis? Kevin Owens, I know I'm talking about two guys who are on SmackDown now, but Kevin, to me, was a Raw guy since he was a Raw guy when I was there. And the guys are just going all out to do the best they can, every week. Whether it's, Cesaro and Sheamus, being dealt what they thought was a bad hand by being teamed up and turning into one of the highlights of the year. To someone like The Miz, who comes over from SmackDown, and continues to excel, continues to make every episode he does must see, or someone like Elias, who, finds his way into a character and allows us to watch the evolution of that character on a weekly basis. So there's always somebody picking up the ball and running with it.
Mick, you were succeeded on Raw by Kurt Angle as GM. He's been entwined in this really good storyline over the past year with his on-screen son, Jason Jordan. And you talk about guys who are stepping up when given the ball. Now all we're talking about is Jason Jordan and his potential. I wanted to know, A, if you saw that your time there, and B, are you on board with these comparisons where it's like we may have a young Rock in the making? And I know that's bold, but it's sometimes tied into more of how Rocky Maivia was received and how Jason Jordan's getting received now.
Yeah, I don't know. The Rock comparison might not be fair to anyone, but Jason is certainly one of the most enjoyable guys. I mean, you hear me laughing doing it. I mean, no one audibly screams due to an injury like Jason. And it's almost like he is almost screaming the words, "Look at me fighting my way through this injury. Admire me for my fortitude." Yeah, there's a lot of potential there, and this is one of those storylines, that people scoffed at first, and that is really picking up momentum and could lead to some interesting places. So, you take a guy like Jason, throw in an Elias who's picking up steam, throw in a guy like Drew Gulak, who is just good television and a great counterpoint to the more flamboyant Enzo Amore. and and the steadiness of the Miz, and then the great wrestling, which I think is a constant, and all of a sudden the 3 hours isn't as insurmountable as it may have seemed.
Not a bad point. Mick, your counter GM on SmackDown was Daniel Bryan. He still holds the position. In every interview, really for the last 2 years, he's sort of hinting that if I can get cleared, I want to return to a WWE ring. And if I can't, I may return somewhere else. You know the physical toll this job takes. I'm sure you know that itch when you're, retired of wanting to get back in there just the same. If he sought your advice, what would you give him at this point of his career for his situation?
Well, I told him years ago that once he was as thoroughly beloved as he was, that he didn't have to do as much on a nightly basis. That he could stay away from some of the things that were most likely to lead to injury. So no doubt in my mind that Daniel, if given a chance, could have some great matches. I just hope he makes some sparing appearances, and I would like to see him have one last great moment on Raw, and he can, wrestle in a wise way that's not going to put him in any danger. And it'd be nice if fans lowered the expectations too, and just accepted that it'd be nice to have a beloved character back in the ring, even if it's just for one big moment.
Do you think there's a Mick Foley blueprint there for him to follow in that same regard?
Not really, because I was already, I'd already had a great run and done everything I wanted to and more, whereas, Daniel's injury came right in the prime of his career. So he's looking at a different scenario, and I don't think he could come back and do like the 3-year plan that I did, where you have 10 matches over 3 years. It all depends. I don't know what his condition is. I don't know what the doctors are saying, but I hope in the end he understands that he's a guy with a long life ahead of him, a wife and a child, and that he needs to make the best decision for everyone, not just himself.
Mick Foley, it was a pleasure to talk to you. The Raw 25th anniversary is January 22nd, the USA Network, 8/7 Central. Tickets are available for the shows. Barclays Center in Brooklyn, the Manhattan Center in New York. Mick, thanks so much for your time. Looking back, looking forward, all that in between. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.